Kick off today's conversation. We're joined by Beth Jacobs, who's president of VChief. Some of you may be familiar with VChief, but the goal today really is to talk about VChief's organization and the benefits of fractional support. Many of us have leveraged various permutations of fractional support in the past. I remember as an entrepreneur, it was critical before I could commit to a co-founder or head of revenue or someone in operations. It's always good to be able to manage your cash flow, manage your next milestone before your next fundraise. And I think that fractional support is one of those sort of can happen in many different flavors and versions. So really excited to have the team at VChief here today to walk us through some of those best practices and answer any questions that you have. Speaking of questions, feel free to leverage the chat as usual. We'll get to those and then we're going to open up for Q&A at the end. So please leverage this time as best as you see fit. And on that note, I'll hand it over to Beth.
Thanks, Anna. So we're going to get the slides up. And as Anna mentioned, feel free to drop anything in the chat. If I miss anything coming through, Takia, feel free to flag me and I will go in and have a look. So today I'm going to kick us off by sharing a little bit about VChief and the work we do connecting fractional executives to busy leaders. Then we'll cover a little bit why fractional support can be a great option, particularly for startup founders and leaders of growing organizations. We'll talk a little bit about the kinds of leaders who are doing fractional work right now. And then we'll talk a little bit about what fractional support can look like for startups at each stage, how to scope out that fractional role, and best practices for ensuring a great relationship with really any fractional talent that you may be working with. The way that I am thinking about all of this is in two parts from kind of when I was a fractional leader and also in my time leading VChief. So those are the two lenses that I will be bringing to this today. So let's talk a little bit about VChief and what makes us positioned to speak on the topic of fractional leadership. So we've been providing fractional and an interim executive talent for more than 8 years now. We specialize in all of these roles, but really got our start in the chief of staff role and have expanded from there, just listening to what folks need and responding to that. So we offer chief of staff, COO, CFO, HR, and an EOS Integrator, if you're familiar with the traction framework. The other is an associate chief of staff role, which is similar to an elevated EA. So someone who can provide executive support with strong past experience and skill in project management, operations, and other functions. We don't provide EA or VA services, but we have strong partners that we are happy to refer you to if you have that need. So please reach out. We have folks who, a lot of folks who work with both fractional EAs and with some of our more senior leaders. So we're a proud partner of FamTech. And as part of that partnership, all FamTech members are eligible to receive their first 8 hours of VChief support for free. So definitely take advantage of that offer from FamTech. And I'll talk to you a little bit more at the end about how to tap into that. The other thing to think about when thinking about fractional roles and as we go through this is that I would say the majority of leaders aren't really sure who and what they need right away. So that's part of what we do is just helping leaders identify the right level of support, the right role that they need for that moment. So don't let that be a barrier. If VChief isn't what you need, we're happy to be a resource and point you in the right direction. So at VChief, we support companies of all sizes and across industries, from nonprofits to startups to educational organizations and VC firms. So we run the gamut a bit. Sometimes investors bring us in to advise and support their portfolio companies, and also foundations on the nonprofit side. And we can work directly for a company that folks have invested in. A little bit about me and how I got here, and this is kind of the two lenses that I am bringing to this conversation. But I won't go back too far. I'm only going to go back to 2017. So my lens from the point of view as a fractional leader. So 2017, you can picture this. I'm working as the COO of a nonprofit tech startup, and we're trying to revolutionize the child welfare world. We're working with transition age foster youth. So it's 2 a.m. and I'm in our office downtown, which is in the back of a shady takeout restaurant. I have a 1-year-old at home, so I'm pumping in the bathroom and working on our business plan, literally all through the night. I also have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old at home who are still in the foster care system. And I'm really doing work that I care deeply about. I'm guessing most people can think about how this story ends. Me burnt out and quitting the job that I really care deeply about. Who knew that working 80 hours a week with 3 kids doesn't lead to healthy places and spaces? Never would have guessed. So when I quit that job, it wasn't because I didn't want to work, or I wasn't even working in something that I cared about or didn't want to do. The fact is that it was unsustainable, and the leap was scary, but it was also a huge relief. And I was really privileged to be able to take that risk. But then, looking months forward, I remember sitting in my home office, which is also the baby's nursery, and wondering, like, how can I make this work? And thinking about my relationship with work, and also hopeful that we as a society can think about how we perceive work and our value at work. And that's what gets me out of bed every day to come and work at VChief. So I started as a fractional executive, trying to find all sorts of interesting projects, both through VChief and on my own. And so I worked on a lot of different things. I helped grow a bootstrapped ed tech startup to find growth channels. I led leadership retreats for a large medical practice. I worked with a philanthropic consulting firm to help them implement their strategic plan, and even helped a startup shuffleboard bar implement all of their HR practices. In 2020, I came on as the fractional chief growth officer at VChief when our founder wanted to grow the firm, and have since transitioned to leading it. So that's the last few years of my experience and kind of where I'm coming from to this conversation. And so I wanted to talk you through the VChief story as a whole, more as a bit of a case study, because we have used fractional support all the way through our journey, and still do to this day. So VChief was launched in 2016 by our founder, Maddie Niebauer. In her first year, she served 10 clients and brought on 14 consultants, and generally just staffed up as client opportunities arose. At that time, Maddie was overseeing the whole arc of our work, from hiring to business development to talent matching. She was the linchpin in the middle, doing everything. As you can see, over the years, our work has expanded significantly to hundreds of clients with a talent pool of more than 400 consultants. So we've learned a lot over the past 8 years. And the one thing I want to emphasize is that the growth was possible in huge part to the utilization of fractional support at every stage. So as a founder and leader, we all know it's critical to stop doing all of the execution work as soon as possible to help you get in your seat and live at the visionary strategic level. And I'm sure you've heard the working on your business and not in your business, but the reality is that's really a tough transition to make. You also want to avoid staffing up too quickly and putting yourself in a position of having to lay folks off if things don't go as planned. And as someone who has had a 2-week runway at a startup, not at VChief, It's an incredibly stressful place to be, looking down at payroll. So fractional support can be a really critical way to ensure you have the talent you need to eliminate those bottlenecks, drive the strategy, and build the right systems and processes without committing to a structure that's not going to grow with your company. The other thing I'd like to highlight from the lessons that we've learned here is that grounding our company's culture and policies and our values has not just been good for all of our mental and emotional well-being. No more 80-hour work weeks for me, but it's been a really successful talent acquisition strategy and retention strategy that we have. So two of our core beliefs are balance and belonging, and we put those into action. We have a 4-day work week. Really, I believe in work when it works for you and your role, and we allow our team to set their own schedules, come to your meetings. We offer unlimited PTO. So building an environment of trust, accountability, and autonomy, we've been able to really attract talent that is diverse, highly qualified, a lot of times, honestly, overqualified, which I love. And at this moment, nobody's been on our team for less than a year, and the least tenured employees were really the first ones in their roles. So I recommend establishing early on the ways which you hope your values will inform the culture and make the choices that will foster that. All right, so let's dig a little bit deeper into what fractional support can do for a startup founder. So seeking the fractional support allows you to tap into experienced senior level thought partnership and support while keeping that firm handle on your cash flow. It means you can keep your headcount, your workforce costs, and expertise nimble as you evolve. And let's be honest, as you weather all of the unexpected storms and roadblocks that we all face in the growth process, pivots are going to happen. So it's really a way to prepare for them without knowing ahead of time what they're going to be. If you could anticipate them and you had that crystal ball, that would be ideal, but send it my way. That in turn will give investors or donors confidence in your future profitability or the feasibility of your model. So as you consider bringing on fractional support, you'll want to reflect on these considerations. What support will you need to get your company to the next stage? Where do you need skills or expertise that you don't currently have? Do you anticipate needing the support long-term, or do you really have a time-bound need? So for example, do you need someone to come in and set up a system or a process, and then you have the capacity to take that on once they depart? Or do you need someone to come in and maintain current systems and processes to allow capacity for current team members? So if it's a long-term need, consider the budget implications of hiring full-time versus fractional, and about what choice is the most sustainable and strategic given where you currently are and where you think you'll be over the next few years. So if you are new to the world of fractional support, I imagine you're wondering what kind of leaders are opting into fractional opportunities. And I told my story as kind of an example of that. But of course, that does not speak for everyone out there. Typically, we found that the folks seeking fractional work are deeply experienced in their roles and industries. But at this point in their career, they're eager for more flexibility and potentially more choice for a variety of reasons. They're usually energized by new challenges and variety that being a fractional leader can provide. And they usually see themselves as a behind-the-scenes leader who can implement and complement their visionaries' vision. So to illustrate what that looks like just in our talent pool, as an example, I pulled some data together. The vast majority of the folks in our talent pool have more than 9 years of professional experience. And if you only look at our fractional COOs and CFOs, more than 90% have more than 15 years of experience. More than 3/4 have a master's degree or higher, and they're a pretty diverse group. 73% use she, her, or gender neutral pronouns, and 38 identify as a person of color. Now let's talk about what fractional talent can do kind of in each stage of the startup journey. So for seed and early stage startups, the way that I think about what the typical need is really seeking out a scrappy generalist. You want a utility player who can learn your leadership style and your preferences, identify opportunities to take things off your plate, and improve systems and processes, and just really lean in whatever is needed as the business evolves. Here's kind of a list of things that a fractional leader might work through at the seed and early stages, but this is just a list of examples. But developing investor pitches, laying the groundwork for operational processes, conducting market research, assessing options for fundraising or grants, planning and hiring team members, and just really rounding out your expertise and skills. Kind of how I think about at this stage is you'll want to focus on someone whose zone of genius is different from yours. So their skills and expertise round out yours and your team's, so they can add a fresh perspective and skill set. My personal example of this is a founder who I was supporting, who told me that finance is like taking out the trash, necessary, but no one likes to do it. I was, of course, horrified because I love finance and it's really my idea of a good time. And that's how I knew that we were a perfect match. It was something he completely had no interest in. He understood it, but didn't want to do it. So that's a kind of your what you need at this stage of growth. So going to the next growth stage, you really want to identify some more targeted expertise to enable your growth. So kind of a list of things that we see folks using fractional talent for: helping you forecast and plan for smart growth, helping you execute on that by building your team, maybe crafting different HR policies, refining your sales process. They can serve as your right hand to facilitate conversations as you set strategy and ensuring the long-term sustainability in the later stages of your growth. If you're anything like us, you'll notice that you will quickly outgrow operational systems and processes that served you well when you were in that early stage. And fractional support can take that detailed work off your plate and engage your team to identify solutions that meet you where you are at that point, and then further down the road as you scale. My personal example of this is actually how I came to work internally at VChief. Our founder didn't have the expertise in terms of growing and sales. So she had hired a sales business development coach for herself, but frankly, it wasn't her zone of genius and she didn't love it. So she brought me in to provide strategy and implementation. And then I brought in a fractional salesperson, and you can see on the previous slides how things went from there. But that's a great example of that growth stage once you've found product market fit and you want to keep moving. So looking at late stage startups, in the late stage, I think leaders typically focus on fractional support for that strategic acceleration. Who and what expertise do you need to take things to the next level? So that might mean new products. It might mean strategic initiatives. It might mean expansion opportunities, M&A opportunities, or planning a strategy for exit. You may also want to grow your public presence, establish yourself as a thought leader in your industry, and the right fractional talent can help you start in helping you build your brand for the next stage. So You'll also want to ensure you're not outgrowing your HR and operations policies and processes as the business takes off, kind of at every stage. I feel like that is an issue. And so considering fractional support to ensure you're keeping your systems fresh and relevant. So my personal experience with this is when I worked with an ed tech startup. They already had an impressive marketing machine for a B2C market. They brought in so many leads just with their website, digital marketing. It was incredible. So it seemed like, what did they need me for? But they came to me to help align the sales process for customers who didn't want to buy online. And so how do you meet the need for those folks and find new channels? So I helped them discover opportunities and close different B2B opportunities that they hadn't imagined, and accelerated their growth at a much larger scale. So that's kind of for the later stage startup.
Beth, we have a couple questions that I think are most relevant to the slides you just covered. If you don't mind, I'll shout them out to you in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be great. Go for it.
Yeah, so two questions. One comes up, do you recommend a fractional COO for maternity leave?
That's a great question. Like a little bit more information. In general, I pretty much always think for a leave, especially for a maternity leave, additional coverage is necessary and helpful. I think it depends on your structure. I will share, like, I just took a short leave of absence, and to cover my leave, I had someone internally cover and then hired someone fractionally to come in and support her. So instead of somebody fractionally coming in and supporting my role specifically, we were able to do it kind of in different stages. I think in general, some sort of support is always necessary for a maternity leave, but that's just my personal opinion.
And I think also, just to add to the COO nature of it, I think naturally we think taking that lift helps. So that, have you seen others address it? How much of that role is,
yes.
I guess going on maternity leave is the question, right? Sorry to talk about Chrissy, but maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, and I think that goes into the what does your full team look like, and what is the need? So what coverage can be done internally by the skill set that you already have, and what do you need to bring in fractional expertise in? So if you need a more senior leader, if you are operating as the COO and you don't have that skill or expertise within your organization, then yes, I would bring someone in fractionally. If you have the skill set already there, then can you just bring in capacity in a different way?
That's helpful.
And then there's another question from Julia asking if there's a typical window for fractional support within a funded startup. So they said, is it simply based on available funds, or is it more focused on growth? In this case, it's HR. The need per your insights became clear around HR policy, or that lack thereof of being completely off brand. So bad for brand. Any thoughts on the window?
Yeah, I always go back to it depends. Again, I think it depends on your own expertise and what kind of support is needed. I think in general, I agree 100% on HR policies and recruitment being a brand differentiator. How you approach not just your clients, but other stakeholders says so much more about your brand than than whatever visual you put up on your marketing. So I kind of think you need probably some HR generalist at the very beginning stages, and then you will need more capacity as time goes on. But again, so much of it depends on who you have in place. Actually, I'll give you a great example. I'm talking to a company right now who has grown by 5 times in the last 3 years. It's a mental health care facility. And they have somebody in the role who is very compliance based. So they're not going to, nothing bad is really going to happen. Like everyone is credentialed, everyone is where they need to be, all the boxes are checked, and they're confident in that. But do they have the skill set to take HR where it now needs to go and build out more systems, more processes, be more collaborative with hiring managers, and where to how to hire the candidate experience, all of that? They don't have that. So we're bringing someone in to help them manage all of those things so that as they grow, they aren't risking their brand. Is that helpful, Julia?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's tough there. I struggle with like I know Kim, you said the employee number. I always struggle with the number because every business is so different that
and even the definition of HR, like, right, I remember getting fractional support on org design in the early stages, but we had a PEO relationship doing some of the work. We inherited policies, we inherited all these things. And so I think the window for fractional support really depends on need and resource. And so if you don't have a clear resource available and you're in this sort of pressure position of needing growth without lots of funding, I think that kind of defines the window for me personally. I think every organization, like you said, is different. But having this sort of painted out by stage, I think is super helpful, because half the challenge is not knowing what you don't know when it comes to staffing. And I think we're all much more familiar with sort of virtual assistants. I think that came to market in a very clear way in our Facebook feeds or whatever it may be. But I feel like this virtual chief of staff and being consolidated through an organization is slightly innovative and new. There were fractional support individuals, but it was very one-off, word of mouth. And I think you're going to get to this, but I think it's really interesting how the roles that you're supporting has evolved because of that need, right? That it's not just the strategy thinker, it's not just the HR thinker, it's more. Yeah, not knowing what you don't know. Exactly.
Yes, and I think that's what we see when folks come to us, is that they also don't know exactly what they need. And so it's very common, especially for founders, to call us and say, like, these are all of the things that I'm having a hard time figuring it out. And so even just knowing what you're looking for, and again, to your point, the I don't know what I don't know is really difficult, especially in those early stages. But frankly, even now, like, I had to consult myself a few months ago, and I was like, what are you doing here? Why are you taking on all of these things? Tiana has told you to give them to them, so why haven't you done that? And so I think it's at every stage, it can be difficult to really always know what you need.
I think that's the right question, though, as a founder, to ask yourself, am I in my zone of genius? I'm using this now from here on. Is the answer would frequently be no.
Right. Yes. Unfortunately, even as the person who's telling you this, same. Do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
Let's see.
Those are all the questions we have so far. Thank you, Beth.
Thanks, Meg. So let's talk about scoping out a fractional role. So once you're fairly certain that a fractional support is the right fit for you, the next step is taking a stab at scoping it out. And as I said, a lot of folks call us before this stage, and I would encourage folks to do that. So if you are seeking fractional support, you've probably already developed a sense of where you're maybe struggling, need expertise, or need someone to take things off your plate. Outline those items. I also do something where I will kind of journal what I have done. I never spend more than 5 minutes a day, but how did I spend my time that day? And how do I feel at the end of the day? And that kind of gets to the zone of genius. If you are doing things in your zone of genius, then during the day, you'll probably feel more energized, more alive, and like you want to keep going. If you're doing things that are not, you'll likely feel drained. So I kind of take stock of that. What made me feel in what way that day? Challenge yourself to think about what those items are that you know are not in your zone of genius, and think about what you hope to be true at the end of the time somebody working for you. So what metrics will you be holding someone else accountable to now or in the future? And how are you going to define their success? So there's some famous saying around expectations being the root of disappointment. And it definitely holds here, both for you and for the person you're bringing in. You really want to make sure that your expectations and theirs are aligned. So once those pieces are in place, you can really begin working on a scope of work. So it should include work streams, approximately percentage of time that you think the fractional leader will spend in each work stream, so that you can really tune into who you're looking for and what skill set and what expertise is the most important to you. So at this stage, you'll want to ensure that you're sharing that scope of work with the rest of your leadership team and getting internal buy-in to the extent possible on that. So if they are clear about why you're bringing someone in, then they'll be better positioned to partner with and support a fractional leader as they join. So some different considerations as you assess fit. As you interview potential fractional executives and evaluate whether or not they're the right fit for your business, you'll want to assess some of the less tangibles. Consider asking questions that get to their work style, communication preferences and habits, and the values that drive their leadership. Again, their zone of genius or key strengths and skill sets. That said, I'm going to challenge you not to gravitate toward the leaders that think and work exactly like you do. The values alignment is essential to move things forward, but when it comes to skill sets and ways of being, you're going to get more value out of working with someone who sees things from a different perspective and who can round out your own superpowers. So going back to that founder who thinks finance is taking out the trash, our values were aligned, our skill sets were in completely different areas. Some questions to think about before you start is, and I put some specific ones here around work style, communication values, and zone of genius. Even if some of these seem silly, like the first one, when do you do your best work? It can really uncover different ways of working that complement or detract from your mission. So really digging in here to make sure that there is alignment. Talking through some best practices for supporting fractional talent. So this is an important piece where depending on the level of fractional talent that you're bringing in, there will be more or less onboarding. So bringing in a fractional EA typically means a little bit more of your time to sit down with them, get them up to speed on systems, processes, on how you work, things like that. With a more senior leader, then ideally the person comes in and can hit the ground running without too much direction. So that said, putting in a little bit of effort on the front end will really pay off later. So making sure that you have time for a new leader to meet with key stakeholders, that they can review materials, do some different fact finding, and generally just gain insight into your culture, practices, and processes will make things easier for you in that first 2 weeks. You can make it as fruitful as possible by making those initial connections, pointing them to the right resources, and having that clear scope of work and expectations in place so they know what they are driving forward to. Once the person is on board, you'll ideally want to set up a weekly one-on-one to check in on work they've done, answer questions, and provide thought partnership and feedback as needed. Whether the weekly one-on-one is live or via email, I always request a regular update on the progress they've made. I ask them to give me their list of priorities and how many hours they've dedicated to their work. So that reassures me that that person is on the right track. It gives me the opportunity to redirect them or reprioritize different items, and then give me deeper insight into where I might need to allocate more resources. If certain work streams are taking more time or less time than originally anticipated, I can go back and make amendments at that point. And I will say this is a personal preference as well. I might check in every week over the phone or something like that for a quick check-in. But I do ask for written updates on a weekly basis, just because it allows me to prepare and really spend the time on the phone with them, making decisions and talking through questions and not verbally getting those updates. And so I want to encourage you to let go of some of those strategic responsibilities. As I said, I think it's really the hardest part, but it is key to making the most of your fractional talent and making that growth and sustainability possible. And I think I'm just going to check the chat. What if the fractional hire is not working out? Great question. Or did I miss one? Sorry. Oh no, that is it. The right way to set up at will hiring up front so you can part ways as needed. So Chrissy, that is a great question. So I will say there's two different things. So with VChief, we work as consultants. And so for us, we are basically on a 30-day notice so that it is flexible. So if we have somebody that isn't working out, we typically ask that you give the person the feedback, what is working, what isn't working. And then if it really isn't going to work out and you need to offboard that person, we typically will ask if you would like to restaff or look at more candidates. Now, if you have hired somebody into a employee role that is part-time, then you have to handle that the same way you would handle any employee that you need to let go. And so document, and the HR Beth coming out, and make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row for conversations like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Can I follow on that question really quick, Beth?
Yeah.
What is the minimum engagement that you recommend?
With VChief?
Yeah.
We actually don't have one that we recommend. I'm going to keep going back to the it depends. Folks bring us in for all kinds of different projects. So I would say, I will tell you our average length of engagement is around 8 months. But again, that's an average. So we have some folks who will come in for 3 to 4 months, maybe work on a strategic plan with an organization, and then hand that off internally. They might be covering a maternity leave or a medical leave, something like that. Or they might, or if somebody's brought in to, say, implement a strategic plan, it could be that they're there for a year. We've also covered sabbaticals for a full year. So it really depends on what's needed. Julia, replacing talent is not working out. What's the methodology for getting the right flex talent? That is a great question. So I think it's kind of what we discussed over the last couple of slides. So to me, the right flex talent is typically the ones who have the values aligned to your organization and that skill set that potentially you or somebody on your team doesn't have skill set or expertise. And so I think it's that blend of getting to, in order to get who the right person is. And I think the most important part there, oh, sorry. Gotcha. I'm like speaking more generally. So specifically with working with us, how we help you find it. That's a great question. Actually, Megan, do you want to talk through what that looks like?
Sure. Yeah. So folks who are interested in exploring services with us, we start with a free needs assessment call with myself or someone else on our team, and really go through like, what are those pain points? Some folks come to us and they're like, this is what I need. And it goes forward from there. Others, they say, this is what I need, but then actually new things emerge. And others are like, I don't know where to start. We have a lot of needs. So we kind of figure out what are the needs, what to prioritize, and we talk through that together. And then from there, once a role is decided together, we have a whole team, matching team, who really knows all of our consultants forward and backwards. And that's where we have more of that like boutique touch of knowing not just their hard skills on paper, but their work style, their team culture. So aligning on what is the scope of work, what are their wish list items for skill set, for industry background knowledge, how many hours are they looking? Is this a small, low hours engagement? Is this a really heavy, almost full-time engagement? And then those work style pieces as well. So our team then identifies from our pool, okay, who out of our pool of 450 plus consultants would be an ideal fit for this. We select out those, we share the opportunity with maybe those 8 or 10 folks we've identified. And then of those who are available, we share with you the top candidates we think you should look at first. So a couple of days after that call, we would send off 2 to 4 candidates with their profiles and their information and kind of why we selected each of them. And the client would look through, see who they want to book some time with to chat with for an interview. And then if and when they find someone, they can get started a few days later. How they interview, what that process looks like with their team internally is really dependent on the client and looks different from client to client. Yeah. And if they don't find the fit there, we of course have more people in our pool. But really our goal is to like really truly understand the needs up front, really clearly and listen deeply so that we are identifying the best folks from the pool for them specifically. Did that answer your question?
Oh, I get Zog now. I didn't get it before.
Yeah, it did take me a minute. I was like, Zog.
I looked it up.
A
Even.
new acronym,
I mean,
but now I'm going to use
admittedly-
it. Yes.
Awesome.
One thing I'll add that came up before in the questions, a little bit above, that made me think of it too, is, you know, talking about getting that right fit. Oftentimes what we find is someone comes in, we prioritize, okay, what are the most priority things to work on and who are the skill sets for that? They work together for a handful of months and then the needs shift and they need Sometimes they re-scope out then, they're going to have their VChief lean in different ways because they also have a skill set in these other pieces, that scrappy generalist, right? But then other times they're like, gosh, I really need someone deep over here or over here. And the beauty of flexible or fractional work is that you can quickly pivot when you have limited resources. You can't bring on everyone. You can pivot and really pivot to expertise as needs change along the way. So we see that often where people bring on multiple VChiefs in different ways, or they're kind of over time shifting to a new VChief who has a totally different zone of genius.
Thanks, Meg. That's an excellent point. I wanted to talk briefly about a case study because I find examples to personally be the way that I learn best and find things sticky. So I'm going to share a quick case study about one of our fractional COOs, Paige, who has been with VChief for several years now and has supported quite a few organizations. So Paige was brought on as a fractional COO by Sichanju, and the economic engine for the Sichanju Lakota Nation. So like many leaders, the CEO found he and his team were working well over capacity and outside their job descriptions. They had grown rapidly, and they had gone from 30 to 80 employees in a short few years. And with that growth came the addition of multiple nonprofit and for-profit subsidiaries. And so the CEO, Clay, knew their capacity problem was causing them to plateau in terms of their growth when it came to accessing new resources, engaging funders, and improving all of their outdated processes. So Clay had faced challenges in the past finding the right executive level talent. So he turned to us to help him bolster his capacity. So in Paige's first 6 months, she completed a credit initiative application with the federal government, helped plan and facilitate every aspect of an investor summit, 2 key strategic initiatives that were on Clay's plate and he had not been able to really get to. So since then, Paige has continued to add capacity in hiring, operational systems, onboarding, annual planning, budgeting, and many more. With her support, they received a $7.9 million in federal funding designed to attract up to 10 times that amount in private investment dollars. So as a result of Paige's coordination with the U.S. Treasury Department through the application process, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen visited the nation to announce the creation of the Office of Tribal and Native Affairs, which is the first time a person in her role has ever visited a tribal nation. So I love this story because I think it beautifully illustrates how quickly and effectively the right fractional talent can alleviate pressure on a leader and drive some of those key initiatives forward. So we've linked here if you want to read the full case study or others on our site. But it's been a great partnership for both Paige and the organization. And so we've already been taking questions, but we have about 8 minutes left for any other questions that folks may have. And also wanted to highlight the 8 free hours of VChief support for free. So if you're interested in that free needs assessment, you can book time with us or contact Megan here with any questions. And she is happy to help.
And I can give a testimonial. I've used VChief. We've used VChief at FamTech to help us with our membership operations, with some strategic analysis and reporting that we had to do for some funding. And so, again, with my founder lens on, I wish I knew of VChief back when I was building, because I would have probably avoided a few very costly mistakes. More than happy to talk offline if anyone wants to, talk about what I learned through that process, because I really think it's critical for all stage startups to leverage this as a strategic resource, not just VChief, but all fractional talent across the board. Awesome. Well, we still have time. We're not running you out the door here, but if anyone wants to come off camera, ask a question, learn more. We put some resources in the chat, but we really hope this was a informational session. I'll give you guys a few minutes if you want to come off camera.
Yeah, I have a question. How do we book a time? I know it looks like it's a link you can press, but since this is a PowerPoint video, like where do we go to book?
Oh, did you see the chat from Takia and Danielle?
Is it in the chat?
Yep, and we'll
Okay.
just put another copy for you here. And we'll also be sharing out, I just put it in again. We'll also be sharing out this recording and deck by tomorrow. Do you have any questions, Danielle? Like when you think about this, I know you're growing and have so much on your plate. I'm just curious, have you explored fractional yet?
Well, not really. That's something that I also do is fractional. Like I do fractional
Oh.
COO.
Oh,
So
really?
I just thought it was, since that was my background. So I was like, oh, okay. So I even thought to even chat with you guys on that. Anyway,
maybe-
so
I think that's great, Danielle, because I see a lot of people who I think are dipping their toes or are full in on the fractional side. How do you guys source your fractional talent? Oh, Beth, you're on mute.
Sorry, I muted myself. My 9-year-old assistant came in for paper.
Oh no, we got that.
So we actually do have quite a few founders in our talent pool. But I will actually turn it over to T to talk about how we find our talent and source, and then also vet our talent.
Yeah. Meg and Beth, please feel free to add or jump in at any time as I'm talking about this. But I would say at this point, we are very lucky to be quite established as a place to go, both for fractional support and if you're interested in doing fractional work. And so I am connected regularly with great folks who are looking for opportunities. We have really robust network, really active referrals, just so a lot of the folks who are already in our talent pool are sending folks that they know our way. We don't currently have open roles, but when they are open, we already have a bank of folks to tap into who we already know are interested in working with us, which is great. Once we then have folks interested, we have a pretty robust vetting process to make sure that they have the skills, mindsets, attributes that we know will lead to success, both in the roles that we're looking to hire for, but also just thinking about what fractional work requires versus regular full-time work. Sometimes folks are coming to us with experience already serving as fractional leaders. Sometimes they haven't done it, but they're really promising leaders, and we want to assess, are they ready to make that jump from the traditional full-time work environment to the different expectations and time management skills that it takes to be successful as a fractional leader. Yeah, happy to share more about kind of the things that we look for, but curious, Beth and Meg, if you would add anything there.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Well, interesting follow-up from Julia. Thanks, Julia. I thought similarly on, I think it was one of your very first slides, was it in the 70s? Identify she, her, or non-specific gender, non-binary, I believe. I can't remember exactly,
Yeah.
but
Gender neutral.
Gender neutral, thank you. What's reading into this? Is this, do you find there is a gravitational pull to women who are looking for flexibility? Caregiving, fam tech, this is how you
Anecdotally, we don't go out and ask any of that, but I would say anecdotally, I would say yes. Our founder, Maddie, that was one of the reasons that she founded VChief, was that she wanted a more flexible working world for herself. And as I said, it's one of the things that gets me out of bed every morning. Is I do believe that we are impacting the opportunities for parents, for mothers, and keeping women in the workforce.
on their terms.
On their terms, yes. Not
That's
at
awesome.
80 hours a week, burned out in the back of a restaurant.
And I'll
Amazing.
add that we see that on both sides. So like, obviously we're talking here on the consultant side, like why are they attracted to consulting work? But we see, I would be curious to know how many of our clients use gender neutral or she, her pronouns as well. Because we see quite a few of our founders of all genders, but who are looking for more flexibility themselves and thus bringing on someone fractionally to allow themselves to have that breathing room and that flexibility for their own life.
100% to that.
Very happy to report that I also hear a lot from candidates who identify as male that they are looking for more time with their families, which I love to hear every time.
Amazing. Well, thank you everybody for the engaging chat and questions and content from VChief and for being an awesome partner over the last couple of years. And you know, as we evolve our membership and offerings, you guys were one of the first that said, hey, we want to support that. And with the 8 hours, that's pretty awesome and very generous. So thank you for that. And thank you for your time today. Well, we'll be looking forward. I just want to make one little plug for our DC event that's upcoming on June 26th, I believe. We're going to put it in our newsletter and the recording of this content very soon. So wishing you all a wonderful rest of your day and thank you again. Take
Thank
care.
you for having
Thank
us.
you.
Bye.